Hey everyone, this is Just Scary Gary with a quick guide on getting started in League of Legends. This guide is intended to help new players be more prepared during those initial games, which can feel super overwhelming. There are a lot of mechanics in League to keep the game fun, however, learning it all can feel somewhat impossible. I'm here to help explain the game meta and lanes, locking into a game, specifically setting runes and summoner spells properly, understanding the in-game player HUD and interface, getting through the early laning phase and casting, itemization and buffs, team fighting and split pushing, as well as some tips on the post-game review and loot screen. The meta describes the current state of the game. As the season progresses, certain champions and items receive buffs and nerfs, which impacts their effectiveness in the game. For example, in previous seasons, Diana was a rather impactful mid laner that could deal large amounts of AP damage. However, after changes to her kit, also known as her ability set, she is now seen more often as a jungler. Some champions do not see this type of movement, but rather different stat updates make them particularly strong or weak. For the most up-to-date information regarding the current meta, check out Riot's patch notes or a website like u.gg for information. Each lane is a host for different champions and playstyles. As you learn to play, I encourage you to try as many different lanes and champions as possible. Top lane champions are typically tanks and fighters. Champions like Sion, Aatrox, Fiora, and Mordekaiser are most often seen here. These champions scale and build items that synergize well with their ability to sustain themselves in fights. After the laning phase, these champions tend to comprise the team's frontline as they are capable of absorbing damage from enemy champions. Mid lane champions have a wide range, but generally are mage casters and assassins. Champions like Syndra, Ahri, Talon, and Akshan are most often seen here. These champions focus on eliminating enemy champions quickly, using powerful ability combos. After the laning phase, mid lane champions generally wait for their team's frontline to start a fight and cast their abilities to quickly execute low health enemies, or snare them in crowd controlled debuffs, which we will cover later. Bot lane is comprised of an attack damage carry or ADC, as well as a support. ADCs like Caitlyn, Jhin, Jinx, or Draven deal a large amount of physical damage from their auto attacks. These champions deal damage per second, and their abilities assist them in dealing more damage as a fight continues. ADCs tend to be less mobile than mid lane assassins, which is why they are accompanied by a support. Supports have various categories, but the primary two are Enchanter supports or Tank supports. Enchanter supports provide increased crowd control to either engage or disengage fights. They can assist in dealing damage, heal or shield, and include champions like Soraka, Nami, and Lulu. Tank supports provide additional crowd control, but also have the ability to absorb incoming damage so that their ADC can survive longer. Tank supports can include Nautilus, Braum, and Taric. Keep in mind that supports generally do not deal much damage. The goal of a support is to funnel kills to their teammates. Lastly, but certainly not least, the jungler. The jungle is generally regarded as a more complex lane, if you will. The jungler will rotate between jungle camps to farm CS, only appearing in lanes to help a laner attack an enemy. This assistance is called a gank. Ganks assist lane players in pushing their lane or catching up if they've fallen behind. Junglers vary in skill sets, but common junglers include Bel'Veth, Jarvan 4, and Kindred. Now that you've decided which lane you would like to play, let's discuss the lock-in phase, specifically runes and summoner spells. During the pick phase, you have the opportunity to increase your stats via runes, as well as assist you in the game with powerful summoner spells. Rune pages can be accessed in the middle bottom portion of the screen. By clicking on the small icon, you can pull up the rune page. This page will automatically recommend a few different options for your champion. By clicking one, you can see more details on what each rune does. All players have a primary rune and a secondary rune, which you decide from 5 rune categories. Categories include Precision, which is improved attacks and sustained damage, Domination, which is burst damage and target access, Sorcery, for empowered abilities and resources, Resolve, for durability and crowd control, and Inspiration, for creative tools and rule bending. Clicking on these categories allows you to choose various options for your runes. As a beginner, I recommend choosing a preset rune page. However, do read and understand these rune pages. As you continue to play League, you can alter these runes to better suit your playstyle or counter specific enemies. Remember, the best way to play League of Legends is to play to your champion's strengths. For example, as a mid lane Syndra, I know that I will not be very tanky, but I do have a fair bit of AP damage. Instead of choosing runes or building items that make me tankier, I play to my strengths and stack my ability power output. Now, summoner spells are featured immediately to the right of the rune page. Summoner spells are hotkeyed to keys D and F. There are various combinations of summoner spells per champion. Seen here are some more general combinations depending on your lane. Keep in mind that summoner spells have exceptionally long cooldowns, aside from Smite. Smite is a summoner spell that only junglers can utilize. If you take Smite as a spell and you are not your team's jungler, the game will penalize you. Take time to review what each summoner spell does and how it can benefit you in your role. Beside your summoner spells are ward skins. For now, this area probably looks a little bare, but as you play the game, you'll quickly collect more and more unique and fun ward skins. Now that we've locked in with our correct summoner spells and runes, we are ready to jump into Summoner's Rift. Let's take a look at the map again via our in-game user interface. As mentioned previously, the map consists of a top, mid, and bottom lane, with the space between lanes being the jungle. Each lane has one outer turret, one inner turret, and one inhibitor turret. As you can see, much of the map is obscured, only showing areas which your teammates see or where you have placed vision trinkets, which you can see at work on this area of the minimap. The river divides the map in half and is home to two powerful neutral jungle monsters, the Dragon and the Rift Herald, which is then replaced by the Baron as the game progresses. The small blue dots are minion waves that spawn at set intervals and arrive in lane to assist you in pushing towards the enemy base. Gray timers can be seen on important jungle camps, which will provide you or your team buffs if you kill them. We will talk more about the jungle when we discuss each lane and role. The minimap is an essential tool on your player display as it can show you how close your allies are, if an enemy is attempting to gank your lane or moving to attack a different lane, what objectives are available, like Dragon or Rift Herald, or if the enemy team is pushing really hard and their lane is making them susceptible to an attack of your own. Pings can also appear on the minimap to help warn your team of danger or missing enemies. We will cover the ping system later on in this video. The Champ HUD shows your champion specifics, your champion icon, and then your abilities view. The small box indicates your passive ability, which will be explained later. As you progress through the game, you will unlock your abilities, check your ability cooldowns, and your summoner spells that you chose during lock-in. Under your abilities is your health and mana bars. Some champions use energy instead of mana, and some have neither. Keep in mind that your health and mana do regenerate over time. You can see a small number on the right-hand side of your health and mana bar to see how much health or mana you regain per second. To the right of this is your item bank, along with your gold storage. You may only purchase items when you are either dead or recall and visit your fountain. You will gain gold throughout the game in a number of ways. All players will passively gain gold as the match progresses. Players gain more gold through last-hitting minions, gaining takedowns on enemies, or clearing jungle camps. Players also gain gold amounts by clearing wards, certain runes, and items, specifically support quest items. We will go more in depth on gold and itemization later in this video. The upper right of your screen has some additional useful information regarding the game. Information such as total kills per team, your KDA, your CS score, total time in game, as well as some PC performance tabs like FPS and your ping score. Pressing tab will show a detailed team info including players' KDA, CS, and items. Lastly, your team info is displayed directly above the minimap. Here you can see ally player health, mana, and respawn timers. You will also be able to see if your ally has their ultimate. The green dot above a player's icon means their ult is ready to use. These display settings can be altered by pressing escape and using the interface tab. Play around with the settings until you have an interface that is usable for you. Some scale their chat smaller, the minimap larger, or their character hub even smaller. Now that we have a quick grasp on the game interface and player information, let's move into early laning phase and ability casting. The laning phase experience varies greatly between each lane. When you first spawn into the game, you will have 500 gold to purchase a starting item. Generally, this is a Doran's Blade for attack carry champions, Doran's Shields for tankier champions, or Doran's Ring for spellcasters. For supports, you will be purchasing a World Atlas. The World Atlas is a support item that allows supports to gain gold without farming CS like typical champions. We will cover this more later. Once you've purchased your first items, your jungler may ask you for a leash. For example, if you were playing on the red side of the map and playing bot lane, as seen here, your jungler may ask you to leash the red buff. Leashing is ally assistance in killing a neutral camp. The most important part of leashing for a teammate is to never take the final auto attack on a monster. It is generally good practice to leave once the monster is at around 500 health. By leashing, your jungler has an easier time clearing their first camp and can continue farming the jungle monsters independently. For other lanes, your goal is to effectively CS, or farm minions. Farming minions gives you gold and more experience. This is one of the most important and difficult components of the game for new players to grasp. A player farms minions by last hitting them. A player can auto-attack a minion multiple times, but if the player doesn't score the last hit, the player does not receive any gold from the kill. As a support, you will receive 3 charges on your World Atlas. Once you have a charge, you activate it by either auto-attacking and executing a low-health minion, or doing damage to a champion or enemy turret. Once you've reached a certain amount of gold via this method, the item transforms. We will discuss this more in the item section. In lane, you will contend with farming CS and an enemy laner. It takes practice to juggle farming CS and doing damage or avoiding damage from enemies. Champions have specific combos within their kits to help them pop off increased damage. Let's use Lux as a champion, for example. Lux has a root with her Q, a shield with her W, a slow and AoE damage with her E, and a bolt of high damage with her ultimate. Combinations are featured here. Rooting champions is a guaranteed way to increase damage, and with Lux's passive, you can increase this damage output by auto-attacking between abilities that strike an enemy. It is important to note that a rooting ability is not the same as a stunning ability. Here is a list of common debuffs you will experience in League and their effect. These debuffs can all be categorized as CC, or crowd control. CC makes it easier for you or your allies to land more damage on an enemy champion. You can also view an exhaustive list of these on the League of Legends wiki, which I will link in the description. Ahri has a charm, Yasuo has an airborne, Morgana has a root, and the list continues. Turrets are threatening structures on the map. Here are some quick tips for them. Turrets target enemies that enter their target zone first. For example here, if the player enters the turret range after a minion starts taking turret damage, the turret won't hit the player until they are the only target in the range. However, if the player enters range without minions, or does any damage to an enemy champion while within the range, the turret will target the player. This is called turret aggro. It is important to note that turret shots have ramping damage, so if the first hit didn't feel bad, the second and third definitely will. It is also worth noting that friendly turrets can assist you. Turrets discourage enemies from attacking you while safely near them. This is why these spaces are generally good places to recall from. To recall, press B. After a short channel, you will be teleported to your fountain, where you recover all health and mana, as well as purchase items. If the player takes any damage, attempts to move, or cast an ability during a recall, the player must start the recall countdown over. Similarly to casting a recall, some champions have abilities that are channels, like Misfortune. The same rules apply once a player casts Bullet Time, Misfortune's ultimate, as seen here. The channeled ability will end as soon as the player clicks to move or auto-attack, or if the player is hit by any hard CC, as mentioned earlier in the video. Itemization is highly unique. Good itemization is a build that supports your champion stats while also counters the enemy champions. These items are constantly evolving, so spend time reviewing items in the shop or review item builds online and use the recommended tab for build suggestions. As a beginning rule of thumb, know that all items are built from smaller components, as shown here. A good recall is one that you take from lane in order to spend gold on an expensive item component like a BF sword, or a finished item like a Kraken Slayer. To oversimplify, ability power mages build items to give them more AP, attack damage carries build item to increase attack speed and damage, and so on. Anytime you are at your base, if you can purchase an item or component, you want to do it. Walking around on the rift with a surplus of gold is depriving you of stats from an item, even if it's a small item like a dagger. Similarly, support item World Atlas transforms into one of the various identities of your choosing, depending on your champion and playstyle. A large bonus to this item upgrade is that the charges you used to gain gold earlier are now charges for stealth wards. Supports can place up to 3 wards on the map at a time with this item. This is considered an active trait for an item. Most items give the player passive stats, while some, such as Hydra, Locket of the Iron Solari, Zonya's Hourglass, and Health Pots, have an active trait component. To activate the active trait, simply press the number it corresponds with on your keypad. In addition to items increasing champion stats, buffs also improve a champion stat, some for a short time, others more permanently throughout the game. Red buff and blue buff spawn regularly on the map. By slaying the respective jungle camp, red buff increases damage and health regen, while blue buff increases mana regeneration and ability haste. There are 6 potential dragon buffs. These buffs remain with the team for the duration of the game, unlike your red and blue buff, and they depend on the type of dragon slain. Once a team has secured 4 dragon kills, they will receive the Dragon Soul buff. On the north end of the map, Void Grubs spawn in what will eventually become the Barren Pit. Void Grubs are a new early game version of the Rift Herald. Slaying Void Grubs gives your team increased damage against turrets for the remainder of the game. Void Grubs do not respawn if killed and disappear from the map at 10 minutes to make way for the Rift Herald. The Rift Herald is a powerful mid-game objective. Once slain, the champion can spawn the Rift Herald in a chosen lane or area, and she will target turrets for maximum destruction. And, as of Season 14, a player can now ride the Rift Herald for additional damage against a turret. After 20 minutes in-game, Baron spawns. Baron, the most powerful neutral jungle monster. Once slain, gives the team a powerful buff assisting in pushing down enemy turrets. Once a team has slain Baron Nashor, they will have 3 minutes of massively increased attack damage and ability power, as well as promotion for minions to make them stronger and more effective in pushing against the enemy turret. Lastly, the Elder Dragon, which only spawns after a team claims their Dragon Soul, spawns in the Dragon Pit. The Elder Dragon is a powerful dragon that gives the team a powerful AP and AD buff, as well as some execution ability. Now that we've covered some laning and items and buffs, let's talk about team fighting and split pushing. As the match progresses, turrets will be destroyed and the laning phase will come to an end. There is no definite time for the end of the laning phase, but generally, if you notice other champions are moving into different lanes to assist, or more team members are joining for objectives, you are likely going to encounter teamfights. Teamfights can make or break a match. Tank champs can help begin a fight by CCing an enemy, and mages, assassins, or attack carries can follow up with damage to kill the enemy champion or team. This is a basic example of a frontline in League of Legends. Frontliners are able to absorb damage while the backline lays down heavy damage. It is common for one person on your team, generally your top laner, to split push. Split pushing is defined as a champion that solo pushes a lane into the enemy base, while other team members are team fighting. This player is securing turret objectives. An effective split push can destroy enemy inhibitors and create pressure that the opposing team has to respond to, otherwise they risk their base being overrun. Here are some final tips for your first handful of matches on Summoner's Rift. Use the pinging system to notify your teammates of missing enemies. By pressing and holding the control key, you can see a list of useful pings. Check your minimap often for enemy presence. And to keep the enemy away from your lane, ward bushes for maximum visibility. On the home screen, you can view various things related to the game. You can view new releases, current events, and even the most recent patch notes. Let's look at the loot and the store screen. As you level up, you'll receive loot, which you can cash in here. Here are some tips on loot. Never spend real-world money on champions. Champions are available for unlock using Blue Essence, which you will naturally accumulate over the course of your time playing. If you want a champion that is locked, play more games on different champions until you have enough Blue Essence to purchase them. Save your real-world money for skins or fun battle passes for the game. Once you have champion shards, you can spend Blue Essence to upgrade them into champion permanents. Similarly, you will receive skin shards. If you have 3 champion skin shards, you can reroll them into a random skin permanent, or spend orange essence to upgrade it to a skin permanent. The loot screen has various options for fun earnings while you play. Explore this page for more details and ways to earn fun in-game skins.